So first of all, thank you for coming. So today, if I look on mobile marketing, prices of like user acquisition is super expensive, and most of the companies, most of the indie developers are finding it super hard to fight with these deep pocket companies. And then on the other side, 70% of the installs come organically from search and from the stores. So what we'll try to focus today is to review these trends in future of App Store optimization and how we can win the App Store battle. So let's start with an introduction with our panel members. Yeah.
Gad Maor, the CEO of Storemaven, leading platform for App Store A/B testing.
My name is Pollack. I'm the CMO of the ASO project, and we are a performance-based ASO agency. We have some proprietary technology we've built to help score keywords and kind of find those opportunities that you're referring to for developers to get more installs.
Hi, I'm Hollender, CEO of Trophit. We're a technology company trying to help developers to use their virtual items as a marketable units. So when they do user acquisition or retargeting, they can use their virtual items kind of a freebies to increase their ROI campaigns.
Hi everybody, thank you for coming. My name is Yuriy Yashunin, I'm CEO of ZENNA company. We have some services like ASO and some one-stop solution with user acquisition campaigns. So we see all details through ASO, how it compared, how it close, and it isn't so familiar, and we are working with ASO and user acquisition together.
Good. I'm Itamar, Benedy, the VP strategy of Glispa. We're a mobile marketing firm helping these big brands and advertisers to focus on their paid growth and monetization efforts. And I would want to start, so there's so many things about App Store optimization, the title and the keywords and the icon. I would want to start is, what do you think are the most important parts of App Store optimization, and what do you think like developers neglect or don't focus enough time on?
I would say the most difficult thing of App Store optimization is really, I mean, the foundation of ASO is getting higher rankings, and it comes down to keywords. And so probably the toughest thing is finding what keywords you're going to use. You know, a lot of like some of those the platforms like Sensor Tower and Apani, they provide what a lot of your competitors are using. But the reality is there's a lot of opportunity that your competitors are not using, where there's a significant amount of opportunity for installs. And so I think probably the toughest thing to do is come up with the keywords. Once you have the keywords, then you can come up with the title and the description. And again, that's only half the battle. The other half, and that's why Storemaven's great, is being able to optimize that conversion. So we can help get you up there, but you also have to get the installs once someone actually finds the app.
Got something?
Yeah, I can add on top of what Blake said. Just before we came here, you said that the first battle is to try and get discovered, and the second one is to trying to get the installs. And I think that each and every company has its own cycle, and there's the right time to do each and every strategy. But once you've discovered, whether it's from paid acquisition, which means that you immediately get discovered after the user clicks on the ad, or if it's organic, there's a tough fight in optimizing that page to not just get better conversions and also get better users that understand what you're doing, given the limited resources that the app stores are giving you.
I suppose that CVR rates, it's the most important thing to improve with ASO. Because if you have some small budgets or big budgets, whatever, it's a very close connection between CR rates and your final CPI. So if you, with ASO, for example, with such service that have gay, you could decrease CPI with high CR. It's very wonderful. It's very big cost efficiency for you.
And I'll add, I think the main problem I see with developers is that they're focusing so much time and money and efforts on user acquisition, but they neglect or don't focus enough on App Store optimization, don't understand how important is it, how it can improve their business. So that's the first thing I would start with. Let's now continue and talk about, so if I'm like Apple or Google, what they will claim in terms of app store optimization, that the most important thing is just to have a good product that people would want to use more. And then maybe Guy, maybe you can a bit like tell us like what you see in terms of how helping app developers to be more engaged and like thus helping them to increase their app store rankings.
Yeah, sure. One of the interesting things that we're seeing lately is maybe the simple question that when developers create an app is, as if I'm a user, how do I know that this app is really great? And we know that there is zillions of apps out there, I don't know, over 1 million, or the numbers are just growing. And when we create great apps and you have a lot of content inside and you try to convey this value to the user and say, I really have an awesome game. You should engage with that and play more, and how you can do that. And one of the things that we're trying to ask ourselves is how you can deliver this value through an ads on the App Store, which can be an ad. And one of the things that we find out, you have to look at it that the app itself, it's no longer a monolithic marketing unit. So it's not like the App Store, it's not anymore a store for apps, because the app itself is a store with a variety of items and virtual items and content that make more sense to the user if you can deliver that before you install the game and start playing with it. And one of the things that we're trying to do is to take every item to be a marketable unit and try to promote that. And there is a lot of things you can do. Last thing I just want to add is regarding the App Store, that we see that kind of 2 or 3 years ago when the App Store shift from paid app to free app. So it was the first thing when this happened, it was very make sense to the user. The value is, it was before $2 and now it's free, so I understand immediately what the value. But then again, everybody, most of the apps now are free. So I think we need to move to the next level and all the time ask ourselves, we need to do everything, as you said, optimize and our campaign, but how we can deliver this value. And I think it's going to be very interesting what we're going to see in a few 1 or 2 years from now.
I think, especially Google, they're very sophisticated. Their background is in search. And they're very sophisticated search engine, whether on web or on the Play Store. And so I believe that retention, which I'm sure plays a part in their algorithm. So having, different, like you do, the currency in the apps and things like that, there's a place for everything. And you need to have, like people say, well, why should I do ASO versus paid acquisition or whatever? And there's a place for everything. You should be doing paid, you should be doing ASO, organic. You should be doing A/B testing all the time. You should be adding currency. All those things will play into ASO overall, because I'm sure the algorithm looks at everything, and it's going to keep the user longer once they download the app.
And then you mentioned A/B testing, and then God, I want to ask you. So, from the developers that do ASO, most of them focus on like changing the keywords and maybe the title or the description, but a main chunk of this is about the creative and about the funnel that it's starts from the banner to the App Store, but it doesn't finish until you actually install the app. So maybe you can share some experience that you see from your company about it.
Sure. So the first thing that we all need to understand, if it's people like us or developers out there, is that installing an app is an holistic story. You see an ad, you're attracted to that ad, you click on that ad if it's paid acquisition, you go to the App Store, if it matches what you've seen on the ad, you end up installing the app, and then if the app itself is as you imagined, you end up using it. And for developers, when they were looking at, we talked about creative, and we talked about keywords, and looking at creatives, I want to give you some tips for each and every developer out there. The first thing you need to do is differentiate between Google and iOS. Those app stores are very different than one another. And the creatives that are most significant for iOS users are not the creatives that are significant for Android users. And simply by testing creatives and trying to find out the optimal app store versions, you can improve your conversion by almost 20%. This is something that the market sees in the past year. And just to shed some light on the differences between the two platforms, on Android, you should always focus on what the users see when they land. So it's the screenshot on the top, which Google calls feature graphic, and it's the content of the video. Those elements are much more important on Android than on iOS. iOS users tend to play more with the gallery, to look at the screenshots, to see less video than Android users. So you have to iteratively test those creatives in each and every platform and to understand which one works best.
And just to understand how important this is, I will want to ask you, the audience, a question. How many apps do you think, on the main markets and the App Store and in Google Play, are being submitted every day? New, unique apps on a daily basis. You have an estimation, somebody here? Okay, I'll just tell you. So it's around 3,000 apps a day. Now this is a number that's very hard to understand because every day I'm fighting with 3,000 more apps that are out there, and then there's a general of 3 million apps on the two main stores, and just understand how the competition is tough. And then you want to add something about it?
Well, I was just going to add on the testing aspect. I mean, maybe there's a good time where, because I know testing is really important, and especially for screenshots and everything. But a lot of people don't believe that App Store testing, ASO testing, and even just for keywords is very important. And the slides that I did would probably be good to show of how important testing is. So ASO is not a one-time thing. It's very the backstory is it's very, very, very important to be always testing. And as you'll see when we get the slides up, the first optimization, a lot of times we see a smaller jump, but we learn from that optimization, which is really important. And then the second one a little bit bigger, and then the third time bigger, and it's an ongoing thing. So it's really important testing, and as you'll see in a second, the increase gets a lot bigger with each optimization.
So we'll continue and we'll come back to this. I want to ask you about iOS 9. A lot of app developers ask me, so now we have this iOS 9, there's some changes with the ad blocking. Do you see in terms of App Store optimization some changes or some tips that app developers should take into consideration, or it's, from your perspective, same how it was with the previous versions?
I can say that from a conversion perspective, one of the things that they change in iOS 9 is that once you launch a new app, and that goes back to what you said, when you launch a new app and you're competing with the different app stores out there, you don't have good ratings and you don't have good reviews because you just started. And to even out that, what Apple did is that now if you're launching a new app and you don't have reviews, they're not going to show this rating. And rating is very, very important. We always rank things and we rank apps, and the users care a lot about the ratings of each app when they come to install the app. So that's one difference, which is good for indie developers, good for apps that are just relaunched.
Yeah, I mean, iOS, they want you to be up to date. They want the best user experience, and so, you want to optimize your app for iOS 9, and eventually, whether it's not directly related to the algorithm, it will be related from a conversion standpoint, like Gad said, which indirectly affects the algorithm, how you rank on search.
And then something very interesting is about video, like a video preview. Before you install the app, you can see a video. What I saw from working with developers is that on the one side, it can increase your conversion rate, but on the other side, it's not the same impact for all developers. So we saw some developers that say that they have less number of installs, but more engaged users. And I would love to ask you, what do you think about having a video? Is it a must? Is it something that are conditions when you think that's a good thing to have?
I think that stop picture from the video is one of the most important things, because stop picture, first screenshot, second screenshot, and third screenshot. I have some experiments with special services with A/B testing, testnets, split metrics. And there is some statistics that 90% of users don't watch screenshot after the shot. So it's only the shot, it's the main. the video stop picture is very important, but we have some differences between Google Video and iOS Video. So Google Video is not restricted to show some character, some art, something like movie, and there is big range for you to take and choose right picture stop cadre. So it's more simple. And in the iOS versions, they are a little bit more strict. They said only gameplay video. So it sometimes is very hard to choose the right screenshot from iOS video in that ways because of that.
So the hypothesis behind adding a video is just like you said, is showing more of your app. So the users that are going to install the app are going to be more valuable to you because they understand what they're seeing and they'll enjoy the app. Now, to add up on what you said, the App Store's users are very lazy. This is how you should imagine the App Store's users. They don't go through the screenshots and videos and the description, and then they make an educated decision if to install your app or not. Sessions are very, very short in the App Stores, just a few seconds. And the most important elements, just like you said, is the elements that you see when you land. And one of the most frequent questions that we get is, should I add my video? And the answer is, any video is not better than no video. And in many cases, conversions are higher for the versions without the video than the one with the video. And let's take into account iOS. So the App Store in iOS, the video is the first screenshot. And one of the things that happens when you add a video is that the poster frame, which is the thumbnail picture of the video, now becomes your first screenshot. Now the first screenshot is the most important element for iOS conversions. And since you have to choose this screenshot from the video itself, developers, it's very hard for them to find a frame from the video that is as good as a screenshot. So at the end of the day, what it does, it pushes the screenshots to the end. Your best messaging, which should be conveyed in the first two screenshots, now less users are getting it, less impressions, and then it's a mathematical question. Less people see the value that you have, and at this moment, the majority of the users will not play video.
And maybe the holy grail of ASO is being featured. So maybe we can share some tips here and what we should do or don't do in order to increase our chances to be featured. Yeah.
I know I've worked with someone closely who specializes in getting apps featured, and I know a few things he said was number one, if you can show off Apple's technology, that's one way to get featured. Obviously,
like with HealthKit, right?
Exactly. So that's obviously one way to get featured. Another way to get featured is obviously have a unique app, so something that's not similar to other apps. And the third way, I cannot remember, but it's something. Yeah. If you email me, I'll let you know. I have, but
so only if you work with Blake, then you'll know that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. But obviously, uniqueness and having something that really shows off Apple's technology, I think, is a big boost for them.
I think something many developers neglect is building the relationship with Apple and Google. I can tell you that working very closely with the App Store and Google Play managers, you can pitch your app and show them, give them a heads up that what you're planning, and this is something that is really amazing how it can help. And then a small trick, maybe it's not relevant anymore, but at the days we saw that if you submit your app on Wednesday, you have a better chance to be featured, because then when the Apple guys will check all the candidates, you'll be on the top list from there. But now everybody knows it, so it's not really a big deal. And the second thing that I would recommend is using with test flight. I think the A/B testing before you launch your app and the alpha and beta users is very crucial for your chance of being featured. So, it's key to choose the right alpha and beta testers, because you want to have a homogeneous audience, but if you have a specific kind of market, you should focus on that. But if some of your users already know your apps, then they're a bit biased, and it's tricky to do the A/B testing there. So test flight is something very key in all this process of working with Apple closely. Maybe something you want to add on test flight or on the building the relationship with Apple and Google.
I think that there is not silver bullet, that some secrets how I can get to the future. But I suppose that there is only two ways. First, if you have a really, really awesome product, some special, also, for example, some new gameplay, some new categories that you create. Because I think that Apple future team, they're just watching RPG, hog and RPG, or that's something interesting. I suppose is the first way. The second way is, to be honestly, you should know very well some guy from the future team. You should know very well. You should have some drink with them, and I suppose it's very, very, very more simply in that case you to get to the top, because I know the examples from first case and from second, so it all works.
Let's talk a bit about retargeting. So today, most of the markets are very mature. We have the same apps on the top grossing list for 2 years. This will, maybe in Indonesia and Southeast Asia and some hot locations, there's still a fight there, but in most locations it's very mature and very hard to get inside. And then what many app developers are doing, maybe the bigger ones, are going for retargeting to just keep these users playing their games. This is very important for App Store optimization, because if I'm doing retargeting, I'm increasing the engagement of my user. And we spoke in the beginning that having users more engaged helps Apple and Google to help to increase your Play Store. So maybe Guy, you can tell us a bit. So you do retargeting, you have your technology. Maybe you can share a bit of insight on that.
Yeah, retargeting is something that a lot of people talk about, and we know it's a trend that keeping growing up. And one of the interesting things that I can share that we're seeing is again attached to the thing that we want to find the most valuable users for us, and people who don't come back anymore, how we can bring them back, and not just by saying we're missing you, or where are you, stuff like that. So and again, if you're trying to bring them back by giving them something valuable for them, that they really know the economic of the game, and you know that they stuck in level 49 and you can open them level 15 or something like that, I think that we find out that it's really make sense to the user. Another interesting thing that it could be regarding moving users from one game you have to another one. That think about that eventually all users will be, maybe it's not politically to say, but you'll be dead users, right? They're not going to be active. You're trying to do everything and they're not coming back. But one of the things they have inside the game, and nobody pay attention for that, they have leftovers. They have, some items they spend money or time or efforts to earn that. And what you can do once you understand, you should all the time bring value to the users. You should call them and tell them, you know what, you can exchange, you can recycle your leftovers to get new item in one of my other game titles. So everything around that, it's again related to the thing that we want to make the user really clear about the value we can bring in, and using items as a marketable unit for retargeting is something that definitely can work for developers.
And Blake, maybe we jump to the example now?
Sure. Just a couple quick slides from what I was saying is that obviously ASO, which is something that's really important to understand, is it's an ongoing thing. And so just as an example, here's an optimization we did. I did it in a music category app. And this was strictly just a name and keyword optimization, which usually we test out first. It's important also to keep testing, because you don't want all of a sudden you change the screenshots, the icons, the keywords, the name, the description, everything together, and you see a lift, and you don't know what worked and you don't know what didn't work. And so it's important to do them in in a methodological approach.
Now we'll continue, and then we'll come back, right?
Here we go. And then the second one here is this is another one. So this actually is the first optimization, and it shows there was a good lift, and then the second one there was an additional lift. I believe on this client, the first one was again just keywords, so optimizing the name and keywords, and the second lift we included some screenshot optimization. So we also changed about 20% of the additional words, so we can learn from each optimization. We don't want to necessarily completely wipe out all the keywords we used in the first optimization, but we can see what's working and what's not, and re-optimize for that second one. And then the third one is just another. It's a third optimization. This is one of our bigger successes we've had. And again, the first one was keywords. The second one was screenshots, and then the third one was we added the icon in there. And in the end, we took them from about 2,000 up to 20,000 a day. And so, again, you see a lift with each optimization, but as we go on, I think we're on our 9th optimization with these clients. It's a continued effort. That's all I want to show.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just maybe to say, I think that one of the reasons that optimization is an ongoing effort is we shouldn't imagine the game as something which is static. And even if the game is static, the audience is not. So the first 500,000 users are very different than the second 5,000 users. And then as you expand and you get different users, maybe different keywords work at this moment of time, or maybe different screenshots. So you should always imagine it as you're driving users from a large pool of potential users, and they're different than one another. And that's why it always changes, and you have to adapt to that.
And what's nice here is that it just gets more and more complicated and sophisticated. So, for example, if you have a keyword that you want to use, you have the plural or single way of using that word. And then there is, for example, there's 28 stores and an app store that have local stores. But what if I am targeting an audience that doesn't have a local store? Then I'm using the US store. And then there's many issues around words have a different meaning and how I can still target audience that don't have a local store. So it just gets more and more complicated and sophisticated as more and more companies have more efforts on App Store optimization. And I would want to ask you, we talked a bit about it, but I think it's very important to talk with the audience about the difference between the app stores, like the App Store and the Google Play. And it's so different that if you're doing something that works good for the App Store, in most times it will be very bad for the Google Play, and most developers don't understand how different is the gap here. So maybe we can share some insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a significant, massive difference between Google Play and iOS. Obviously, those are the two main stores that we usually talk about. And Google comes from they're a search company. That's where they grew their company into a multi-billion-dollar company. iOS is not, and so it's at least right now it's pretty. Sorry, I shouldn't say easy, but it's a lot easier to understand iOS's algorithm. That being said, my background personally is in search and web search, and so when you look at kind of how Google's algorithm is in web, I think there's over 200 different points they look at. And right now, Google Play, that's why we get asked a lot, do you offer link building? Link building is like a hot topic right now because, as you probably saw, when you start looking up apps on your Android phone, there's the apps show up. It looks, you can literally download them right from there with the icons and everything. And so I think that Google is going to start taking a lot into consideration besides just the keywords and everything on there. Link building is, I believe, extremely important, if not now, to future-proof the app, which is huge. And so, obviously, that's a service that we've started offering because, again, Google is going to be probably taking into links. I think eventually Apple may, but right now they're very, very different. Exactly, just because you do something on Apple right, and we've had hits and misses on being successful on one versus the other. So. Very, very different.
One of the on May this year, Google introduced Google Listing Experiments, which is basically allows developers to A/B test different icons and screenshots on Google Play. And one of the things the developers have started doing is they've tested things on Google Play, and then they implemented those results on iOS. Because they said it's the same game, we're targeting approximately the same audience, and if a screenshot worked well on Google Play, it should work well on iOS. And that's something which is highly not recommended. And the majority of the people the developers that had tried it, seen actually a decrease in conversions. And the reason is pretty basic. The structure of those app stores are very different. Imagine them like two different websites. The structure creates different engagement. If you're testing apps, if you're testing screenshots on Google Play, when the majority of the users never get to see them, and then you implement them on iOS, you shouldn't expect to see good results. And vice versa, if you're testing video on iOS, but the sample is relatively small, and the reason that this variation one is a different reason, don't expect that to work on Google Play. So I think that the structure of those pages just creates different significance to different elements, and that's something the developers have to test independently.
So another very important thing I would want to mention is the connection between user acquisition and App Store optimization. So if I'm looking on user acquisition, first of all, there is a report by Tune that on every one user you will buy, you'll get a 1.5 of organic. So that shows the connection, but more into understanding what's like in the background. If I'm acquiring users, like for example, on incentivized traffic, or not very quality traffic, these users will not be very engaged in the app. So that's one way I can harm my ASO efforts. Another thing is that if I'm not very targeted, so I have a huge bunch of users coming to my App Store page and then not downloading the app, it will also very harm the ranking. That's what God's team is trying to improve. And then the point here is that it's very important to connect between these efforts, and these teams should work very closely together in terms of being as much as targeting and finding these premium users, and then thinking what keywords can attract them to find them from an organic perspective. But developers that don't do this connection lose something that they can optimize better. And maybe you want someone to add about it, or?
I'm happy to add to it. So I think it's extremely important to do both paid and organic, and I think they help each other out. You know, someone finds you from an ad they see or whatever, and they come back organically, or vice versa, they see organically and then see an ad, and so I think they really help each other out. And I think that again, it just goes back to like, should we just be doing one or the other? It's important to do as much as you can, obviously, from a budget standpoint, but it's important to do both, because they really will both increase if you do both together.
I just like to add, it's like the real life. It's all about keeping your ROI positive, and you have to do actually everything. And before said about the A/B testing and find the right ad strategy and improve the app every time and find the right media sources that will bring you the best user for the audience. So I think the funnel is very, you have to do a lot of stuff. There is no one thing you should do. And this is pretty much it. So it's hard work. And I guess you know that.
I would like to say that that if you are using some services, not like Google Play, but some sources for A/B testing, so you should know that your CR rate for this test will be decreased. So it's very high drop-off rate, and you should know about this and be aware. But then if you will implement those results to the App Store Developer Center, then you will see increases of all CR, and you could take higher CR and low CPI. But we see that we are trying to use those A/B services like landing pages. For example, we have this summer especially a lot of Chinese developers who are trying to achieve Russian market, and they have very often some bad localized App Store pages, even have not Russian description, so it's really decrease our SR rate. And the things that we could use some of A/B services to changes to write screenshots, to write iframe, to write descriptions, but we see that the range of drop-off rate is very huge. So we see that our SCR was decreasing. So we cannot use it as a user acquisition company separately from developer, but for very many developers, they use it and they have result from this.
And you know, something pretty cool not many companies do is to learn from the ASO that works for you. Who are your users? And then to try to optimize the product by understanding better. Okay, so my users, these are the keywords that work best. Maybe I can learn who they are and then try to improve the product. This is the other direction than what most developers do. And another opportunity that we'll not very talk about today, just to mention briefly, is about alternative markets. So in Google, yeah, there's the formal Google Play, but still because it's an open source, there's an option to have like an alternative market, an unofficial market with the Google app. And there is a bunch of these markets outside there. There's a huge opportunity on these alternative markets. ASO is in a very of its first steps. So just by doing ASO right, you can highly increase and get tons of users. So just an opportunity that something we should consider. Before we finish, I want to ask you, so Apple introduced the Apple Analytics. Do you see this something that impacts this ASO optimization and something that developers should take into consideration by this tool?
I mean, I think there's a lot to learn from the analytics. I mean, you can pretty much see how many people are seeing it and then installing it, the app, and so it goes back to looking at the kind of the overall picture of your app and the conversion, and obviously, though they don't allow it, directly A/B testing, which you can obviously use GAD, but you can see what's working and what's not, and so there's it gives you another alternative to kind of test out the app and play with it and try to find some way to increase it through
Yeah, I think that the only way to improve, if it's an ASO topic or any other topic, is to collect the right data and measure it. And Apple Analytics is a good start, where for the first time developers can see how many users are actually seeing their pages. It's a pretty basic question, and now you have this answer, and now you can start to see how the conversion rate looks like for each and every channel. And I think it's a mandatory tool together with attribution services and other analytics services in order to understand where users are coming from and how they react. And overall, when I look at this market, and I think that what we'll see happening in ASO is, it's already starting to happen, some of the companies here are doing it, is we always, in the beginning of Facebook ads, we measured clicks. This was the metric, and then it's conversion. Now it's not conversion anymore, it's downstream metrics, like how many people have actually deposited in my app. And the questions that I find very interesting is not just which keywords or screenshot or video brings more installs, which is something that most of us are doing now, is to take it to the next step, and I trust all of us to do it, and show like which icon brings better metrics, downstream metrics, which keywords are bringing maybe less users. Maybe the conversion rate is lower, but has much more value, and the same thing that happens on the web are hopefully going to happen on mobile as well, which is good for everyone.
And I'll also mention there are tools like Sensor Tower and Mobile Dev HQ by Tune to help to measure and track all these keywords, and there are more of companies like the ASO project that has like an internal solution for the full package here. Okay, thank you very much for attending.